Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3.
As Councillor Kitts is making her way back to the seat, that brings us to quorum. Thank you. And it is 10:50 now. So we'll resume the meeting. I'm going to go back to the speakers list as it existed prior to the recess. And just a quick reminder for folks that we'll be going to the joint committee meeting 15 minutes after this meeting concludes. So the first speaker is Councillor Curry. Or sorry, first questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This question to staff, obviously. The conversations that you're having, you've already had with GOBA and FOTEN and developers in general. Would you say that the maybe 5 or 6 sections that are not, where you're not in agreement, you're actually diametrically opposed, or there's just confusion on one side or the other, that these are likely to be resolved, or these ones where there are significant differences that, you know, will be difficult to resolve?
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor, for your question. I would say that the majority of these are minor issues that I am confident we can resolve. We've scheduled a further discussion, and we feel that the discussions have gone well so far. The major issue that we've been trying to resolve is relating to amendments 45 and 62, which were spoken to by Mr. Chown earlier.
Thanks for that. Sorry, can you just remind us, 45 and 62 are which ones?
So amendments 45 and 62 are related to protected transportation corridors. Essentially, Amendment 45, the Part 1, relates to clarifying a note on Schedule C2. And Amendment 62 relates to providing the corridors that are shown on Schedule C2 onto C9 and C10. So the note on C2 currently says that the corridors extend to the municipal boundary, but Schedule C2 only shows the urban area. So we're proposing to show these corridors extending into the rural area for ease of reference, rather than having to rely on that note in the policy. That's essentially our position. And we also have Deb Lightman, the manager of transportation, here as well, who could speak to this.
Okay, is he going to that?
Bear with us, Councillor. Ms. Lightman's just coming to the table.
Okay.
Deb.
Through you, Chair, extending the lines for the protected transportation corridors to the edge of the city limits is consistent with kind of past practices about protecting our rail corridors, the existing corridors within the city that have historically accommodated rail, and the provincial policy statement certainly supports our ability and interest in protecting these corridors for future transportation uses.
Okay, so I mean, if I'm hearing that you're only, you know, this should be resolved, was it just a matter that you didn't have enough time? Or, I mean, I'm wondering, you know, we get all these comments that there's a lot of developer influence at City Hall. You know, I think we've heard that maybe once. But the thing is that without us knowing really what's going on in the background, we want to be assured that there aren't significant changes that would fall under the category of developer influence, instead of staff following what the official plan has directed and the provincial policy statement. But I'm fairly reassured, but I want to understand if it's just a matter of time. It's not a matter of differences of opinion, that there may be pressure applied behind the scenes and staff will change their decisions.
Through you, Chair. GOBA has concerns about us protecting these for future rail use, but we feel it's very important to protect them for future rail use. So we're going to maintain the changes.
Okay, last question. If there was anything that was to be changed while you're having these discussions between now and the 30th, if there's a particular area that it would be affected, would staff reach out to a councillor or councillors that may be more affected by a change ahead of the 30th?
Through the chair, yes, Councillor, we would be happy to do that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Vice Chair Gower?
I'll pass. Councillor Curry asked what I was going to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Plant? I'm just keeping the speakers list that we had, but if you want to yield.
Oh, okay. Sorry. No, I just wanted to follow up on what was being chatted about before the tech problems really took effect, in terms of the word shelter for, Ward 12. So Ward 12, within the existence of the word shelter, has a myriad of organizations offering housing solutions. Obviously this motion is directed to, or sorry, this idea is directed more towards the emergency overnight shelters, which we know don't work, which we know are not a solution, and which we know can wreak havoc for the individuals who need to use it. And I really do want to thank staff who sort of looked over this motion with me. I do have to disagree with Councillor Troster that this would somehow, be some sort of hindrance for other kinds of LGBTQ organizations or women fleeing domestic violence. We have a lot of those organizations in Ward 12. They are absolutely wonderful. We are actually looking to expand more of them. And to be quite frank, if the city was ever really wanting to put more shelters in Ward 12, they have come up with sort of creative wording around them. They've called them overnight respite care. They've called them physical distancing centers. They've called them, I can't remember the exact wording for the Salvation Army one, but they called it something like respite care as well. And so, this is hoping that we can transition those towards actual housing and not have emergency shelters. And I hope people will support the motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Plant. Councillor Kavanaugh?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was wondering about some of the amendments that were pulled. And I was a little concerned in terms of protecting Greenbelt, and this revolves around Moody Station, where we had an amendment to the official plan about protecting the Greenbelt around the Moody Station. It's very unique because it's a stage 2 station, but I just wanted to make sure that that's still holding.
Chair, that is correct. So just to clarify, no amendments are being pulled right now, but that specific amendments relating to Moody Station and the Greenbelt Transect, staff's prepared to move that one forward. I think the nature of the discussions is really with the submissions from Lisa De La Rosa and Mary Chown on those specific amendments that they spoke to.
Okay, thank you. By the way, I appreciate the protection of the former rail lines. Those are something you just don't get back, and they are excellent for cycling. I was just on Bikes on the Hill yesterday, and it's a national campaign. We got to hold on to our rail lines. They're excellent for getting around, and who knows, maybe other things in the future, but we got to hold on to it. We can't let a section go and then and have it disconnected. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kavanaugh. Councillor Tierney?
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, first of all, I want to thank staff for putting together great work here. I think we're moving things along. Anytime I hear bus full of people, that means there's a lot of items on it, and omnibus is always one of those scary words. Overall, I'm quite satisfied with everything I see in front. I do see the discussion taking place on one specific item. So, Mr. Chair, I'm going to move a motion similar to what we did when it came to light rail, where sometimes you want to have those additional sober second thoughts, maybe a little more discussion before it gets to council. So, whereas the report Omnibus 2 official plan amendment includes a new area-specific policy to limit the number of emergency shelters permitted in Ward 12 to 4. Therefore, be resolved that the proposed Amendment 56, Volume 2C, new area-specific policy, in parenthesis, page 27 of Document 1, Appendix A, be referred to Council for consideration at the meeting of the October 30th, 2024 meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tierney. So we do have a referral motion on the table. Is there any discussion or debate of the referral motion? Councillor Troster?
Yeah, I just want to thank Councillor Tierney for this. Again, my intention is not to oppose the intention necessarily behind this piece. I'm just really concerned that the language as written, whether the intention is to do so or not, would also ban many other facilities because the definition that Royce read out, it doesn't strictly define, you know, a single men's shelter where individuals cannot stay in their room during the day. Like, I just would really like to see that language be more specific, and I think we need more time to figure that out. Because we're seeing such a growth in the need for so many other kinds of supportive and transitional housing. And unfortunately, the word shelter is just used in so many different ways. I just don't think it's well defined enough in this language for me to be comfortable with. But I don't want to make a rash decision. I think we just need a little bit more time to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chancellor. Councillor Plant? Nope. Okay. No sweat. So there is no further discussion or debate on the referral motion. Is that motion carried?
Carried.
Thank you. So we'll return back to a discussion of the main item. I don't see any more hands up. So if you will, just bear with me for 20 seconds. I'm just going to get the amendments in order for voting. So the first vote will be on the Gower technical motion. Is that carried? Thank you. The second vote will be on the Gower motion. It was Vice Chair Gower, I think, to move this item to the October 30th City Council. Is that item carried? Carried. And then is the item as amended, I think, by the referral carried? Carried. Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you very much to staff for the work. That was the second of 3 rounds of omnibus. So we'll need to do this again next quarter.
To be determined, Chair, next quarter or early 2025.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, let's take a moment and let the folks from Build Ottawa get ready to make their presentation on its annual report and its bylaws.
Thank you, Chair. Just as before we get started, I'd like to introduce Pamela Sweet to my left. She is the chairperson for Build Ottawa, and she'll give some introductory remarks. And then on my right, Danish Nirmal will go through the details of the presentation, and his team does the heavy lifting for Build Ottawa. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's my honor to be here as the chair of Build Ottawa. It's the new name. You may remember that it used to be called the Ottawa Community Land Development Corporation. Certainly, we are glad that we have a new name. And we also have a new mandate, which has allowed us to put an emphasis on affordable housing. For the first time, we now have that included with the goal to have 30% affordable housing when we deal with a land transfer. So due to the changes with the to the corporation and our new mandate, maybe we can go to the next slide. You don't mind? There. Great. Because of the new policy and procedures that we've had to deal with, perhaps we haven't been able to do the land transfer sales that we would have liked, but we've got a new direction going that's going to allow some new parcels to be marketed at Conroy and Lante Drive. So that will give you a bit of an idea of what we've done this past year. We have the annual report before you. And with that, I'm just going to turn it over to staff and they can perhaps answer any questions as well for you on Build Ottawa. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sweet. Good morning, Chair and members of committee. Next slide, please. As mentioned by Ms. Sweet, last year staff spent a significant amount of time making sure that the corporation's marketing processes were in line with the new mandate. Once that was complete, we embarked on marketing strategy for 2 parcels of land. For the parcel at 2060 Lantier Drive in the city's east end, we worked closely with the city's housing team on the 30% affordable housing requirements that are required as part of the development. One of the conditions of the sale was for the developer to build Vanguard Drive, which along with a challenging market may have hampered the sale. We have now secured funding through the province's Building Faster Fund to construct a portion of Vanguard Drive, and we feel that this will greatly assist in generating more significant interest in this parcel of land. The revised sales offering was released yesterday for this parcel, and we have already received 6 requests for information packages. We are highly optimistic that the marketing of this site this time around. Since the original marketing, there have been multiple sources of funding and incentives made available for developers who will deliver housing that meets the affordable criteria. The second site is on Conroy Road in the city's Greenboro neighborhood. This parcel was marketed in June 2023. The site's challenge is that it's designated for industrial and employment uses. However, not having direct access to the 417 or 416 highways means it is less desirable. Given the corporation's mandate to make lands available for affordable housing, staff did explore changing the designation of this parcel to allow for residential uses. However, due to provincial and official plan policies, a change in designation from employment to any other land use category outside of a formal official plan review, which as we know only occurs every 5 years, so that cannot happen right now. Some encouraging provincial legislation changes, however, were introduced this past summer, which will allow for the lands to be potentially changed from employment to residential uses outside of that 5-year window review. City planning staff are processing the required official plan amendments that will facilitate this at the local level. Once those policy changes are in place, Build Ottawa staff will revisit the marketing of this parcel for residential development. Feedback from the development community indicates that there would be greater interest if these lands were available for residential uses. Next slide, please. A great deal of effort goes into preparing parcels to make them market and development ready. Staff is actively working on the parcel at 4160 Riverside Drive, where our partners are Transport Canada. Resolving servicing constraints and negotiating with upstream landowners to gain access to servicing, including official plan and zoning permissions, are some of the issues being dealt with. The resolution of these will generate an uplift in the value of these lands ultimately. With respect to ongoing activities by staff and the corporation, last year staff spent a significant amount of time monitoring compliance of purchases with previous sales agreements, ensuring that the original purchase terms are being complied with. For example, for the 3071 Riverside Drive parcel that we had sold, also known as the former Bayview School, the original purchases went through a court restructuring and the parcel was sold to another entity. Staff worked with Build Ottawa Legal Counsel to ensure that the corporation's interests were protected and the original concept plan was being complied with. For the parcel at 1209 Saint Laurent Boulevard, the purchaser was creating a land assembly with a neighboring landowner, which is going to produce a higher development yield and a significantly larger number of residential units. We secured a density participation agreement with the purchaser, ensuring that Build Ottawa reaped some of the uplift in value as a result of the land assembly. And for 641 Longfields Drive, this is one of the first parcels of lands sold by the corporation in 2009 to Campanelli Homes. This is a phased development and with close to 1,000 units at full build-out. A key deliverable of the sale is a transit plaza leading up to the Longfields station. Staff are in the process of reviewing the plaza designs right now, and that's ongoing. And the remaining former Canada Town Centre lands were finally all sold to the corporation. Staff is working with purchasers to again ensure that the terms of the original agreement are being complied with. Next slide, please. And lastly, this slide simply summarizes the main tasks that legal counsel had to process in order to render Build Ottawa compliant with the new Not-for-Profit Corporations Act. which replaced the Corporations Act. The detailed changes are contained in the report tabled with the committee, and Build Ottawa Legal Counsel is here, Chair, to answer any questions related to the bylaws. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that presentation. And it behooves me to thank Pamela, particularly as Chair of Build Ottawa. Thank you for your service. Kathleen Willis, who is the Vice Chair. Thanks very much to Councillors Kelly and Johnson, who serve alongside with me as Directors of Build Ottawa, as well as the Mayor or his representative. Wendy Stevenson puts in work as the President, CEO, Cyril as our Treasurer and CEO, and Peter as our Secretary and COO. There are some questions for you. I have minimize that window. I'm going to re-maximize it and go to Councillor Kavanaugh.
Okay, thank you. Now, appreciate the work of Build Ottawa. And I wanted to ask about the relationship with Ottawa Community Housing. Given that the city is the sole shareholder of Ottawa Community Housing, is it possible to have that Ottawa Community Housing have first right of refusal on lands for affordable housing, since that's their mandate?
Through the chair. So that process is in place, but it happens before the lands get transferred to Build Ottawa. So when we do a circulation of surplus lands, the Affordable Housing Group would put up their hand. It also gets circulated to OCH, and so they can inquire also. And if that was a piece of property that they were interested in, it would happen before it ever hit Build Ottawa. Build Ottawa would only acquire the lands for disposal if they passed on it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kavanaugh. Councillor Brockton, I'm not sure what happened there, but thank you. Your turn.
No problem. Thank you, Chair. Did the modified mandate of Build Ottawa also include a modification to the annual revenue targets that were sort of on an annual basis? We knew over a term of council what your revenue targets were going to be and broken down on an annual basis. Did that change when the mandate changed?
Through the chair, the targets did not change.
So what was your revenue target for 2023?
I believe it was 5.5 million.
5.5?
Yes.
And we realized nothing?
Correct.
Okay. And how many other years in the past did we realize nothing in sales?
I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I would say since the corporation came together in 2010, there might be 1 or 2 years where that had happened. And what I would point out though is over terms of council, we've always hit our mark. And so, you know, in the real estate market, there are ups and downs. Last year was a bit of a down year, obviously, but as Mr. Nirmal presented, we feel optimistic going forward with the 2 properties we mentioned today that we'll be able to sell those and get back last year's target and hopefully this year's target, this year's target.
How many deemed surplus lands or properties exist in the city of Ottawa by the city of Ottawa?
I'd have to, through the chair, I'd have to get back to you on the exact number. I mean, we have multiple buckets of surplus lands. We have lands that are considered, you know, non-developable. So those generally just get sold through the general disposal process. The lands that go to Build Ottawa would be lands that can have some strategic development on that. But now also with the push for affordable housing, there are lands that aren't even hitting Build Ottawa because the Affordable Housing Group may be very interested in it. We're working on some other projects through the housing group also. So there are a number of parcels. There's probably 10 or 11 parcels right now that we're actively working on that are of strategic nature that will satisfy a lot of different efforts we're putting forward.
Thank you. I know there are parcels of land that the city owns in River Ward that serve no purpose at all. I've had past conversations with the former corporation about moving things along and there really is no reason. First of all, I don't know if they've been officially declared surplus, which is one main step, but I'd certainly like to sit down with staff to look at properties, at least in River Ward, and have a better understanding what the long-term plan is. For 4160 Riverside, which used to be in River Ward, when did we declare that property surplus? When did City Council declare that surplus?
We believe, through the chair, we believe around 2014.
Okay, so why is it still not been sold? You list bullets, collaborated with the airport, Transport Canada, commissioned servicing studies to resolve OPA and zoning, negotiate with upstream. Why are we going through this process? Are we trying to make it even more valuable by doing some of this work now, as opposed to just selling it and let the new owner take on any type of planning or servicing requirements?
Yeah, so the challenges with this site, Chair, is that it does not have direct access to services. It's a parcel right across from the Ottawa Airport, just south of the Shefflin Bridge and Hunt Club Road. And it doesn't, so the biggest challenge is servicing, basically. It's sanitary servicing and water services, which have to be brought from north of the Hunt Club Bridge. And we have been looking at options for doing that. And we also are dependent on the services existing in that location. So Taggart, who's a builder north of the bridge, are going to be extending and developing a subdivision that they will be putting services in, and we are going to be tying into those. So that's one of the stumbling blocks to bringing this parcel forward sooner than later.
But we're making a conscious choice to do that as opposed to selling it. You know, we're in a housing emergency. There's an advantage to selling the land and allowing the new owner to do this work. They could buy it and not decide to develop for X number of years. But again, if the mandate of Build Ottawa is to facilitate the construction of housing, again, I just want to point out that, you know, we declared it surplus a decade ago. I think it's time to sell these properties. My last question is just 3071 Riverside, also in River Ward. It would be good if your report mentioned the property was sold again in 2023 through a bankruptcy. You did mention this verbally. But one of the points is corporation had extensive consultations with legal counsel to ensure Build Ottawa interests are protected. So what exactly does that mean?
So through the original purchase and sale agreement, Build Ottawa has the right to buy back the property should the ultimate purchasers not be able to fulfill the terms of the original agreement. And that's essentially what we were protecting, to make sure that with the new purchases, those conditions and agreements carried through with the new transaction, including the concept plan that went through extensive consultation, and council had ultimately approved the changes to the concept plan, and we were ensuring that the new purchaser was not making any major changes to that or departed from it, in which case, if they were, that would have to be brought back to council.
Thank you. I appreciate that added bit. I would just point out, given this is a public report and the public was very engaged, as you know, through this process, an additional bullet mentioning that Build Ottawa was also protecting the interests of the community would be my suggestion, because there are still to this day concerns, given that the new owner has not yet publicly stated what their intentions are in the middle of the property, which I think is a yellow flag for me, that they have not committed to building the two mid-story apartment buildings, that they're still on the fence. And that just continues to add fuel to the fire to those who are concerned with this development. But overall, I appreciate the annual report and the work that Build Ottawa does. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brockington. Councillor Menard.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. I wanted to follow up on Councillor Kavanaugh's questions just around how many units were created for this reporting period that Build Ottawa had sold or previously sold. Do you know how many units were created in the reporting period?
For 2023, which is the annual report before us, through the chair, well, we did not sell any land, so we wouldn't have generated any units in 2020. Oh, through the sale, no units wouldn't have been generated in 2023.
Okay, and then just on the piece about we can buy back the lands if they're not, I guess, built upon in a certain timeline. What is that timeline? Do you give them a criteria quota? Say if you're purchasing these lands from the city, you need to build by this date, or how does that work?
Through the chair, that's correct. Well, each deadline is unique to the deal, so we'll negotiate that with the purchaser. And a lot of times we will, if we feel like they're showing initiative, like they're not just sitting on the property, we will work to extend it if we show they're showing progress. We don't want to be hard on in terms of trying to buy back the lands if they are showing progress, because buying back the lands isn't an easy process either.
Have we purchased back lands in the past? Does it happen often, or?
I believe in one instance, and I don't think it was through Build Ottawa, but we had some industrial parks that were developed by, it might have even been by the old city of Ottawa, and one parcel we did purchase back. I think we may have purchased back from Loblaw. Yes, and then we resold it.
Okay, I'm wondering, when units are created through this process, are they mostly market units, or are they non-market units?
Through the chair. So up until we rejigged the mandate for the corporation, they'd all been market rate, and we sold the land on the market for highest and best use. In one instance, we were able to negotiate I think 5 affordable units on a property in the core, that we sold the Main and Main. So they have been market in terms of, like, our new mandate says, hey, 30% needs to be affordable. So going forward, we should be seeing more units that are of like a non-profit affordable nature.
Yeah, well, that's a big difference, right? Just being affordable for, say, 10 years at a, CMHC definition versus a not-for-profit, non-market. And that's what I'm trying to get at is there anything in your mandate that speaks to non-market housing, not-for-profit housing, whether it be through CCOC or OCH or other organizations that would develop that, or is it solely market-based with some level of affordability potentially built in on the market?
Through the chair. So one of the options we put forward, and we did with the Lantier piece, is to encourage, if just a regular developer was looking to purchase, one option we encourage is, hey, maybe partner with a not-for-profit and give those units to the not-for-profit to manage. And so we didn't get any offers on the Lantier piece, but that option's still there. But the other thing I would point out is, when I was responding to Councillor Kavanaugh, is that with OCH and with our affordable housing group, they actually get first dibs on the property even before it comes to Build Ottawa. So most likely, if you're going to see a true not-for-profit on the site, that would happen before we even declare it surplus.
I heard the point about OCH, and I guess my question would be, are we offering it up to other not-for-profits? We've heard a lot about an Ottawa Community Land Trust and other not-for-profits in the city that are able to develop on lands when that land is offered up for cheaper rates, and then we have affordable housing in perpetuity. It's not 10 or 15 years, it's in perpetuity. I hear you about the OCH process, makes sense, because we have obviously a huge partnership there. Is there then a step in between there where we're saying, hey, not-for-profits in the city that operate, say, like Nepean Housing, right, which didn't incorporate with the city back when we amalgamated, they kept their own organization going, and they have over 500 units and have been very successful with not-for-profit housing, but they're not part of the city. So would we offer to organizations like that, for example, to say, hey, we've got this piece of land for sale. Perhaps there's a reduced rate here because you're going to create not-for-profit housing in the city before we offer it up just to market supply.
Through the chair, yes, the process would be, so when we circulate it, if our housing staff put up their hand to say this is a worthwhile piece, they would do their own RFO and put it out there to the not-for-profits that are on their list, and then they would submit a proposal to acquire the lands at a nominal price. So that would be open to all the different groups that you mentioned.
But is it open to the market and all of those groups, or just those groups?
Just those groups.
Okay,
if it goes down that road, then it's just those groups.
Okay. And is the price moderated for those groups? And OCH, obviously, the price would be moderated, I assume. You're not asking OCH to pay full market value for a property.
No, and OCH, they're made aware of our surplus lands, but I believe they would also compete through the RFO for the lands, and that process is typically at $1. So lands are transferred at a nominal price to whichever not-for-profit proposes the best project.
Okay, so if other not-for-profits were saying, look, we'd like to get in this, not OCH, but other not-for-profits, Nepean Housing, CCOC, whoever it might be, they would also potentially get that property for $1 and say, yeah, we're interested in this, it's developable, and we can have not-for-profit housing on this site. They have that ability through the process as it exists right now before it opens up to the broader market.
Correct. So again, if our housing group puts up their hand that it's a not-for-profit, the land, I mean, gets transferred over to them to then market it towards the not-for-profits. If they don't put up their hand and they don't think it's a parcel for a not-for-profit project, then it would go down the Build Ottawa route, which we would still now require at least 30% in any project.
Okay. Are you seeing now, just with the climate out there, and sorry, Chair, it's my last question, but just with the climate out there around, you know, affordable housing and housing affordability, are you seeing more uptake now from OCH, from not-for-profit housing providers that are taking you up on that offer, given the federal funding that's there, the accelerator funds that are there, to sell that property to the not-for-profit sector for a lower value rather than going to open market?
Chair, I can't really comment on that because that would be Lauren Reeves' group that is involved in that. I think, as Mr. Nirmal said during the presentation, we feel optimistic with all the changes that have occurred in the last year that on the Lantier piece that we're marketing now, we should see more uptake.
Okay. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thanks. Would it be accurate to say that by the time a piece of land has gone through the housing branch and the city, the various different organizations within the city that might want a piece of land that is not needed for what it's currently being used for, by the time it's gone through parks, it's gone through affordable housing branch, it's gone through all these folks, it really is kind of, it's going to go to a market. Like Build Ottawa is in the business of selling land, but we do have some constraints on the buyers to do affordable housing now as part of a market mix. Is that sort of an accurate way to put it?
That is accurate, Chair.
Yeah, it's getting land into the hands of our not-for-profit partners is not Build Ottawa's mandate. That's the city's mandate. And I guess, Debbie, that'll be your mandate, I think. Amazing. I'm very sorry, Councillor Troster, I jumped in there, but I felt that was.
That's okay, Chair. I'm not offended. And I'm just feeling a sense of deja vu because I asked very similar questions last year that Councillor Menard just asked. And I mean, I would say that main building that you mentioned is a cautionary tale. 5 nominally affordable apartments. This is a building with hundreds. And the architecture is very striking. It's a very good use of land. It's not completely built yet. I've toured it twice, but these are luxury apartments. 5 out of several hundred. So that to me is a policy failure. It's not a success if we're talking about requiring affordability. Is there any way to compel groups that take advantage of this land disposal policy and commit to the 30% affordable housing threshold to compel them to work with a reputable nonprofit? Because private developers are not delivering. And I know that a lot of nonprofits would like the opportunity to develop that kind of partnership.
Through the chair, first, just on the main piece, we actually didn't have a policy for that at the time, so it's a very small win, but teeny win.
Well, and that's also the failure of the rental construction financing initiative. Like they got federal funding, and the bar was so low for what was required of them to receive that sweet funding advantage, and it produced no 5 nominally affordable units within a building of hundreds. To me, is 0. Right? It's functionally 0. So, point well taken.
And then, on your second question, so we're right at this point, we're leaving it up to the market to decide how they want to deliver the 30% affordable housing, whether they want to do it on their own through like a CMHC program, or if they want to partner with somebody. And again, Lantier is sort of our first initiative for this, so we'll have to see how it goes. And if we feel like we want to get the not-for-profits in there, we would take that back to the board to talk to and get some direction from them on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curry.
Yeah, really just a comment, but sort of a question to Build Ottawa, really. You know, whenever I hear the phrase in perpetuity, you know, Councillor Menard used that phrase. You know, for those of you who followed us on the Canada Golf Course, in perpetuity means nothing. It doesn't mean in perpetuity. That's the frustration. So when we talk about, you know, affordable housing is now something you're going to be looking at, and, you know, maybe you work with CMHC, we see CMHC is not in perpetuity either. Nobody's in perpetuity. There's no such thing as in perpetuity. In perpetuity came about, and then they had to create an act called the Perpetuities Act so that people could understand what that actually means. It doesn't mean forever. So I just want to ask Build Ottawa, when you say, you're going to come up with, you're going to focus on affordable housing now, that doesn't mean that the affordable housing that you may be involved with will be there forever, and nor would any not-for-profit. Is that not true?
Through the chair, that is correct. And we don't, in our agreement, we're not mentioning in perpetuity. I believe we have a timeline of 49 years for the affordable units.
Right, good. I would suggest you never use the term in perpetuity in a contract. That would be my advice. Put a number on it, but really, you're not going to put, 1,000,000 years or something. So just so we're all clear, nothing is in perpetuity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Curry. All right, so I don't see any other hands up. Items 5.1 and 5.2 are separate. So the item 5.1 report recommendation is that council as sole member of Build Ottawa confirm the general operating bylaw for Build Ottawa as approved and adopted by the board of directors as outlined in this report and has attached in document 1. Is that carried? And with respect to the annual report, the recommendation to us is that Planning and Housing Committee recommend that council receive the audited financial statements of the Build Ottawa for the year 2023 in the annual report attached as document 1. Is that carried?
Carried.
Thank you. Madam Coordinator, am I forgetting anything? Well, I'm the best. There are no in-camera items that I'm aware of. I'm not aware of any notices of motion. I'm not aware of any inquiries. We have no other business. This meeting is adjourned to meet again on October 23rd. I think that'll be a bit of a beefy one. It is 12:30. We're going 11:30. It just feels like 12:30. Yeah? We are going to take 20 minutes and then we're going to start the meeting, the joint meeting between the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee and PHC. It's a different Zoom, so thanks everyone.